Joe, can you hear me?
Yeah, you know.
Oh, finally, dude. It took a while, but I'm glad we can get that technical difficulties sorted out there, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, brother. Let's start the interview, shall we? So today on Millions Press, I'm your host Patrick Malinowski, and joining me is amateur MMA fighter Joe Williams. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So, Joe, man, tell us about your story. How did you get into the sport of MMA? How did you discover this passion?
Uh, um, hmm. So I can give you two answers to that question. I can tell you how I actually got involved in MMA and what got me to like the sport. What made me want to do MMA? Which one do you want to hear?
You know what? Might as well tell both stories, man. We got some time.
No problem. So since I was a kid, I've been in martial arts. I grew up doing Kung Fu and Wing Chun under Sifu Ronald Ramlochan. And since I started martial arts, everything that I learned, I always wanted to know how this could be used in an actual fight. Because growing up, I was always the smallest guy around any circle. And when I went to school and whatnot, we got into a lot of fights. And being able to fight was something really important, something I needed to know how to do. So one question I'd always have for my instructor was, what can I learn or what can I do to become better at actually fighting in a real fight? And by the time I was about 15, I started fighting in something called Sanshao, which is like kickboxing and Muay Thai, but you could throw the guy. So same rules, just like a kickboxing match, we have throws, but no fighting on the ground. And I did that for about 2 years before I saw UFC on TV for the first time when I was 17. And when I saw UFC on TV, I fell in love with the sport and I decided that's what I want to do. So everything I did, everything I learned, I kind of centered it around getting me there. Trying to develop certain skill sets that would be with me in a career towards MMA. And when I was about 19, I got drafted to compete in the first national sambo competition in Trinidad, where I fought a guy by the name of Karen Bone, and I lost that fight in a few seconds. So Karen Bone actually became a really close friend of mine. I didn't know who he was at the time, but him and Joash Wilkins, they are amongst the best MMA fighters in the entire Caribbean. That's how I got to find out about them. Karen Bone invited me to train with Joash Wilkins, Dwayne Hines, and those guys. So I started training with them, and I've been with them ever since.
That's great, man. You definitely got a good story how you discovered MMA. That's awesome for sure, Joe. Now, let's talk about this weekend. Well, actually, not this weekend. Let's talk about your upcoming fight in
Next weekend.
Next weekend for sure. Yeah. So let's talk about it, man. So what do you know about your opponent so far? How are you training for this one?
Well, I've seen him fight a couple times. From the first time I've seen him fight till seeing him fight, he fought last Saturday. I've seen a lot of improvement in him. I've been able to identify things he needs to work on, but I'll probably tell him that after we fight. But he's been improving a lot. His last fight was actually very impressive. For a small guy, he's very strong. Basic preparation, basic camp. I'm working a lot on my ground game because my stronger side of the sport has always been the striking. And I'm not necessarily thinking I'm going to need the ground game, but I'm taking it as an opportunity to sharpen up those things because it's an MMA fight. We could start standing, we could get to the ground. I actually see that he's been improving his ground game as well, which is really good. You know, I've seen a lot of videos he's been posting about me and whatnot. And to be honest, I really appreciate it because I've been saying for the longest while, this is what we need to be doing in Trinidad to get more eyes on the sport. So what he's been doing, I hope he keep that up. Even though he's been saying some not very nice things about me, but you know what? It's our fight. We're gonna get in there, we're gonna punch each other. I don't expect him to say nice things about me. But yeah, he looks like a very good opponent, and I'm very excited to be in that cage with him.
I'm glad that you are very excited, and I appreciate you showing respect for your opponent. That's obviously a nice sportsmanship gesture from your end, and it looks like you're definitely ready for this matchup. So all the best to you on that. Now let's talk about your nickname because in the cage you use Senshi.
Senshi, yeah, that's correct.
What's the meaning behind Senshi?
So Senshi is the Japanese word for warrior.
Ooh. So how did you become the warrior?
Um, so as I said, growing up in martial arts, I always wanted to know what actually works. And I have experience in a lot of different systems, a lot of different styles. I know at least something in the most common styles. And I'm not gonna go as far as saying I know every single style in the world, but I know at least something in the majority of styles. And I've been able to pick the things that I think work for me and that's gonna work in an actual fight. And to answer your question, I realized from a young age that martial arts, since the beginning of martial arts, it really is about being able to fight. So you have a lot of styles, a lot of systems that come out, and they centered around doing katas and whatnot, which is fine. But then there is a lot of black belts who are not able to fight in a real fight. They're gonna tell you things like our style isn't designed for sports or isn't designed for the cage, it's designed for real fighting. But what gets more real than you and another guy locked in a cage and you're basically limited by not being able to hit in the groin, not being able to poke or bite or different things like that. But everything else is like what gets more real than that, you know? So I've been able to pick little things out of these styles that I grew up in and apply it to what I do. And the name Senshi, I came up with it because when I was about 19, I started teaching martial arts. I became an instructor in martial arts at 19, and I decided that I was going to teach things that are going to prepare people to fight and strictly fight, not just look pretty, not just go win some medals and trophies, but to actually be able to fight. And I thought to myself, what was the word that I'd want to use to demonstrate what I'll be preparing people to do, and that's basically it. Warriors.
Hmm. That's a great story for sure, Joe. The way you explain Senshi, I love it, man. It definitely suits your persona. Embrace that nickname for sure in the cage. Now let's continue chatting about yourself, man. So where do you want to see your career in the next 5 to 10 years with MMA?
So the next 5 to 10 years, I would like to accomplish all the things that I wanted to accomplish in the last 5 years. So I started MMA when I was 19 and I had two fights. I had to go up in weight for those fights because there were nobody in the 125 category back then. So I fought at 135 for those two fights. I had some injuries within the last 9 years. So 2015 would have been my last fight. And then I had a series of injuries and different complicated things that took me out of the sport for a while. And every year for those 8 or 9 years, I've made attempts to come back and it didn't work out. And last year in November, I was actually able to get into that cage healthy, get into that cage for a fight. And I didn't win the fight, but I was really happy just to be back. And for the next 5 to 10 years, I'd like to accomplish all the things that I wanted to in the last 5 years, which is build up my build up my record in amateur and get to pro, so that I can showcase the things that I already know I can do. So I've been a fighter before MMA. As I said, I was in Sanshao before. So even though my last couple of MMA fights I haven't won, I have wins in Sanshao, I have wins in kickboxing, so I already know what I can do. So I would like to be able to showcase this in MMA for the next 5 to 10 years and see myself turn pro and reach as far as I can get.
That's awesome, Joe. Hopefully, your dreams and your goals are achieved. Now, let's talk about because you're from Trinidad and Tobago. This is the nation that you represent in the sport. So, what is the culture like in your country? Is MMA growing? Do you see?
Um, for the last 5 years, I've actually seen MMA grow a lot more than it was all the time. I think there's a lot of things that we could do to get this sport growing even faster because we have a lot of amazing athletes down here. Like we have Josh Wilkins, we have Karen Bourne, we have guys that don't even fight anymore because the opportunity is so thin for them. and they do have they have the ability to reach the highest levels, but as I said, the opportunity is not there for them. And I think one of the things that we could pay attention to in Trinidad is the fact that the athletes are probably gonna have to focus on building themselves. The promoters as well are gonna have to focus on the athletes, and I see Adam doing that now, and I really appreciate Adam doing that because I've been seeing for so long nobody looking at the athletes and putting the focus on them. You know, there are about 3 or 4 promotions in Trinidad that runs MMA, and it's been existing for years, and they throw shows every year, yet it isn't growing at the pace it's supposed to. So I don't know if you understand what I'm saying,
Yep.
but I notice a lot of them, they are actually waiting on the government to fund them. They're waiting on, different things that may or may not happen. So I think the major thing that needs to be done in Trinidad is for the focus to be on the athletes. The athletes are probably gonna have to start focusing on themselves. And if we get more minds like Adam actually thinking about, like this is a big deal. You know, if we get more guys thinking about stuff like that, they can push the athletes further. Because we have, as I said, we have a really amazing athletes here. They don't even have much sponsors, and the ones that do, they might have sponsors that probably buy them a ticket to travel or whatnot. But I'm sure you live where, in the US, right?
Canada.
Canada, right? So even better, I'm sure the fighters in Canada, they have sponsors doing a lot more for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because they recognize the opportunity behind marketing through our athletes. And in Trinidad, we don't look at things like that. Everybody just here wondering, what the government could do for them and asking what the Minister of Sports could do for them. And it makes things a bit complicated because it's going to take longer for the sport to grow and longer for the athlete to get their name out there. So I think if we, as the athletes in Trinidad, we focus on getting our names out there and let business owners and companies realize the worth that it has behind putting some marketing behind these athletes. A lot of big business deals could come from this. Fighters will start to get paid more, and the sport will grow a lot faster. Because another thing I've noticed, a lot of people in Trinidad, if I meet 10 people today, 8 out of those 10 people don't know we do MMA in Trinidad. And that's a problem because we've been doing it here so long. So why shouldn't it be 9 people out of 10 people knows we do MMA in Trinidad? So that's the things we need to get to. And as I said, with what my opponent Rocklin Cornwall is doing, is gonna make people know we have MMA here. So I really appreciate, even though he's been saying things that, I really appreciate the fact that it's gonna get MMA out there and everybody's gonna know we do it.
Man, that was a great way to explain MMA in your country. I do hope that, more people participate for sure. And obviously organizations like Cuff and all that do a great way of trying to promote MMA in Trinidad for sure. Now, Joe, let's change the subject from combat sports to a little bit more of your personal side, man. What are some of the hobbies that you like to do when you're not focusing on MMA?
Hobbies, that's a tough question. Is between training and working, I work in my family business. We're currently doing a land development right now. And between training and doing that, I mean, I have my hands in so many things. So it's kind of hard to think about hobbies. So
Exactly.
whatever time I have outside of those things, I used to train, and different things like that.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like you have a busy schedule balancing work and training for sure, of course. Now, what about, because I always got to ask MMA fighters this question and they hate it, but, we got to know your personal side, man. What are some of your favorite foods when you're not training?
Favorite food when I'm not training? Huh. No, that's an even harder question because I like food so much, and I actually have a food business. Um, hmm, I like burgers a lot, but different types of burgers. I like burgers. I like pizza. I love Chinese food. Tacos. I it is a tough question.
Of course, and plus you got the variety of the best foods that you just mentioned for sure. And
Yeah, it's hard to choose.
yeah, it is hard to choose. And you did mention one food group that every fighter that I've interviewed from Trinidad this month have been saying pizza, man. You guys
Pizza.
love pizza over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Joe, let's get back to the conversation of MMA. So, how do you describe yourself as a fighter in the cage?
As a fighter and what?
How do you describe yourself as a fighter in the cage? What is your fighting style?
Ah, so as I said earlier in the interview, I am stronger in striking. I don't like to think about style at all because of the amount of things that I've been experiencing. It's hard to think about style. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about, right? So I grew up doing Kung Fu and Wing Chun. So I learned to punch totally different from boxing. But when I started learning boxing, it's a totally different thing. Some of the principles are the same. So what I was able to do is I was able to identify how the principles from one style and another style align with each other. So now when I throw a punch, I no longer know whether my punch is kung fu or boxing. If I throw a kick, I don't know if my kick is karate or taekwondo or kung fu or muay thai. It just I know different ways to do it. A better example I can give you so in karate or in kung fu, their kicks are more focused on getting to the target faster. And the power comes from the velocity and the torque in the hip and whatnot. Whereas in Muay Thai, the the torque would come from the swing. So the alignment is totally different. But I've been able to identify how the both of them can go together. So there are times when I feel like I need a kick to be faster, and I can make the adjustments to get the kick faster. And there are times I feel I need a harder kick to the leg, and I can make the adjustments to get there. So sometimes my kick might have a little bit of kung fu, it might have a little bit of Muay Thai in it, and if you understand what I'm saying.
Yep.
So it's hard for me to think about style. I just know that I prefer the stand up because I've been involved in kickboxing and sanshao and whatnot, and I love the stand-up game. If an entire fight can go standing on the feet alone, that I'll be the happiest guy in the cage.
For sure, man. You definitely got many ways of how you fight, and obviously you got that experience to back it up. So we're definitely going to be very excited to see you against Rockland June 29th. That's going to be a good one. So, Joe, just one last question for you before I wrap up this interview. So where can, if somebody in the audience is watching, man, where can they stream this fight?
I think you guys are streaming it on pay-per-view, right?
Yeah, so you might as well tell
Yeah.
the audience that you can watch this fight, the pay-per-view fight, exclusively on Millions.
So yeah, you guys can tune into Millions. It's millions.co.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can tune into millions.co, stream the fight with Rockland and I, and get ready to see our absolute war.
Yeah, exactly. I love it, man. It's gonna be a war for sure. Joe Senshi Williams, man. Thanks for your patience and thanks for coming on the show today, man.
Thanks so much for having me on.
No worries, man. I'm glad that Millions can help promote combat sports in the Caribbean, man. So all the best to you, man. So take care and have fun with this one.
Take care, man, and I will.
All right, until our next chat.